Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Open Democracy's book club. Today we're going to be focusing on Democracy in Black by Eddie S. Glaude Jr. And before we get started, I wanted to kick us off with the land acknowledgement. Open Democracy acknowledges that we do our work on Indakina, the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples, past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land and waterways and the people who have stewarded Indakina throughout the generations and continue to do so today. All right, and now that we've done our land acknowledgement, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Joe for our mantra.
From the beginning, this book club has followed this mantra. Where are we? How did we get here? What are we going to do about it? So we might view each book in that light.
Great. So now we're going to talk about this book, which is very timely, even though it wasn't written. It was written, I believe it was 2018. I think we'll talk about it in our breakout rooms, what it's making you think of in terms of, again, where are we now? This sort of posits some things about where we are and how we got to be. And then hopefully a good discussion of, what can we do about it? Where are we going with this? And so we always like to begin either with the speaker, either with the author as a speaker, which wasn't possible for this, or a clip of some kind to frame and contextualize and give us a sense of Professor Glaude as we talk about the book. So here's I think it's 9 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, short clip, and Autumn is going to run it for us.
We do have a small group today. We're going to discuss for about 30 minutes. And then we'll come back to the larger group to sort of share out those sort of insights, especially the insights on what we can do about solving some of these problems.
Oh, I felt so connected to those men. Are you still there?
Yeah. You're
Okay,
now
we're
in the big group,
now.
but yeah.
Okay. And why do I, a white American female, feel like that? It's puzzling me. And she knew I had been a nurse, and she said to me, oppression feels the same no matter what the cause. And she had been just like our minister here in Exeter. Nurses are very oppressed, and you're not seen, you're not heard, and we all know what that feels like. And I never equated it at all. It's not the same thing, because I could quit my job and change careers, so it's not like I couldn't get out of it, but I never made that connection before. So in the 2 books that I wrote, I put it in, because it was about the oppression of part of it was, and how to solve it. And so anyway, so that was what our experience unlearning racism was.
Thanks, June. We're now back in the bigger group. Kate, do you want to share what from your conversation, or did you have somebody who would share?
We didn't, I'm not going to try to summarize it. Linda, you were taking notes. Do you want to hit a few of them? Oh,
I can. We were impressed with the value gap and the idea of racial habits that you're not even aware of, but they are there. And the idea of the fact that even though there is targeted legislation that could help reduce the gap, the wealth gap, that the real action has to start on the ground, from the ground up, and with groups and people working together. I personally, I was struck by the fact that some of the leaders that we recognize, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson in Ferguson, they came for the show, but they didn't really seek out the people who live there and who are really affected. So, Kate, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I commented on Ken raised the point, sort of piggybacking from the film, of how there was a fortuitousness to the fact that he was giving a paper that Cornell West, got him there. And then I read the section about opportunity hoarding, that white people have these very strong networks that, what was it? What page was that on, folks? I can't remember.
It was early.
75% of white people, what was that? 75%. Anyway, that we have very white centered social groups, and that helps us connect for jobs and stuff. And he says that's how we keep the good stuff. I don't want to waste time looking for it again, but I like the concept that we're opportunity hoarding. And then that led us into how we see what we're doing, we're not conscious of it. It's a little bit like, white, as it says about white people, don't see the water that they're swimming in. It's so around us and supports us so thoroughly that we believe our value. Oh, and people talked about those blind real estate, things. Two people go look at a place, and the white person gets the rental or gets the buy. Sorry, jumping around. Other people, help us out here. Ursula. Angela. Angela's going to do this book in her, as a book club down in Silver Springs, Maryland. She's seen a lot of Eddie Glaude and they've read his books, and so she'll be doing a book club. She can learn from all of our mistakes.
Yeah. We didn't pick a reporter, but I was wondering if Michelle would share some of our conversation. You're muted, but
I think those of us who had read the book, which wasn't everyone, was surprised that he didn't value the progress that had been made, or was disappointed in the progress that had made by the leaders that we are aware of, like Obama and Sharpton. That was kind of new to me. I didn't realize that. I was surprised that we picked a book that was older, but then after I got into it, I saw, a lot of the issues are the same or worse. So, and then we got to the point where it's like what to do about it. And some people have taken classes on trying to get over, and hidden racism in ourselves. And we talked about that. And that was really, I thought, really good. What to do, what steps to take.
Do you want to share some of those resources? We can put them in the chat. Like, what were some classes or readings that?
Well, Lois in our group, maybe Lois was the one who was telling us about her class that she took. So
and June took the class, and I took the Undoing Racism by URock.
Okay.
Lois, do you want to speak about it? Or June?
I think Lois is trying to find it.
I'm sorry. I found I'll give it to you afterward, Olivia. It's the history of white people in America. It was on YouTube, and part of it's on World something YouTube. It's an NPR type thing. Anyway, what was the question?
The class you took in Portsmouth?
Oh, Standing Up to Racism with Ann Romney.
And June took one with her church.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different resources. The one I did is in Springfield, Massachusetts, but I can share that class too.
Willie and I also took being white in the White Mountains, so just a look at racism that we did here with our local group. And we talked a lot about reparations, which was a really interesting discussion. We read Mike Tice's book, Tyson. Yeah, Tyson. And that was a really interesting discussion about ways we could help. One of the suggestions was offer to buy college materials and books for an African-American student off on his first year. A lot of them were monetary things like that. Make sure your library has a wide selection of books. And we talked a lot about those kinds of little steps that we could take.
Did anyone take the what's it called, Me and White Supremacy class? There's a book on which it's based, but my synagogue social action group read it one chapter per week and talked about it. But it's written by a Black woman, and it's geared towards white people to understand their white supremacy, like you said, the water that the fish swim in, that you don't even notice the water's there. We swim in our white privilege, and a undercurrent of feeling like as whites we're the superior group, almost entitled to get into Princeton type of thing, unless we have some kind of connection like Eddie had.
Mm-hmm.
There was
So
a
thanks,
book,
Olivia, for putting that in the chat.
there was a book called Waking Up White or something like that, and I did a discussion group on that and didn't find it very helpful because she was so white that it was hard to understand. And living here in New Hampshire, I haven't had a close Black friend since college, but I found very helpful books like Ta-Nehisi Coates's books.
Yeah.
And the one to his son and
His son, yeah.
his
Yeah.
essays, and then Water Dancer, which is fiction, but fiction can really help you to feel into the racism of our past. And I just listened to James, which is imagining Jim in Huck Finn in a very it's
I love both those books. Good choices.
helpful to me.
Mm.
But one thing that I did that was an action was found a book for adolescents, worked with a 5th grade class. I got sucked into teaching 5th grade in 2023 because a teacher left here in town, and I was on the sub list, and the principal said, "Can you teach for the whole year, for the rest of the year?" And I decided I'm going to teach divisive concepts from now until June. So we had this book about a slave girl in Rhode Island who then gets bought and shipped to New York, and it was all about the period of history, the 17 and 1800s that I was supposed to teach, and we made it into a play. And I think the kids, because there was so much dialogue in it, we didn't have to do much rewriting to make it a play. And the kids really got into it. It worked well with a group that couldn't sit down and study. They just hadn't had much practice with sit down learning, but they could do a play. And so it worked well.
Hmm. One other thing, resource that's available is that they come out of Portsmouth, but now they're statewide, the Black History Trail.
Oh, it's great, yeah.
They have a ton of resources, and it sure was eye-opening for me to see up close and personal how, here in wonderful liberal, well, not liberal, but we think of the North as not being as racist as the Deep South with Jim Crow laws and lynching and everything. But there were slaves here in New Hampshire, and our white culture kind of erased that. by, for instance, what they did in Portsmouth was they realized that under a street, a busy street in downtown Portsmouth, under it was a black graveyard with a lot of slaves and others buried there, and it was just sort of paved over. So they dug it up and created some monuments to it, and they created this trail, a Black History Trail of places showing, this was the house where a slave lived, slave to a white New Hampshire person, sometimes slaves from the South who came up on the Underground Railway, wound up settling in Portsmouth, and those stories are really interesting to hear about. And they have a film. I don't know when they show it, but what is it? When the river runs north, or is that? It's something like that.
Howard Frank Mosher.
Yeah.
I have a little example of what reframing can do in the Black Heritage Trail's most recent marker being presented at the Mill Yard in Manchester to honor all of the Black slaves who freely produced the cotton that made those mills the biggest cotton producing, cloth producing mills in the world, with all of these centuries of no acknowledgement of how they got that way, how the owners got so wealthy, and how the city grew and how the mill industry grew. No acknowledgement that it was slave labor that created the benefit here. And now there is a marker honoring the hands and the people who made that possible. Just this past
Kate.
week.
Oh, yeah. Just first of all, we will put together a resource guide that, will just be on a sheet of paper that you guys can all get, but related to the Black History Project, the Black History Trail, Jerry Ann Bogus that Ken was talking about. There's a group of people that are, I think it's called the Citizens Archive Project. They're going through census records and things. And digitizing and doing a lot of research into the many Black people that were living here. And so it's citizens archiving. I know that Michelle Stahl at our Monadnock Center for History and Culture and Linda's nodding. We know people who are doing that work, and so it's another way of organizing and making history known, and it's right around us. What was it? What did you say? White people being white in the White Mountains? Was that?
That was Ellen, yeah, that took the being white in the White Mountains. That
Being
seems-
white in the White Mountains, and that there have been Black people here, people of African descent, and we just haven't known about them. So it's another
Right.
interesting.
So there's
thing.
lots of books appearing in the chat, other resources on this, which is really.
I put my book recommendation too.
Yeah, I'm with you, June. Yeah.
And I'd like to put down, a lot of people hadn't read it, is Evicted,
Yeah.
which is
Oh,
about
God, yes.
Milwaukee. And
Ugh, yes.
unbelievable. I live right next to it, so it's
Oh,
happened
man.
by me too, and I had no idea.
Yeah, that's a
So
devastating book. Yeah.
So I think to summarize, since it's 8 o'clock, I just want to say, I think we all thought reading more, doing trainings, but also that Joe is absolutely right. We have to take action. And so the actions we can take around passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act so that no one is discriminated against to cast a ballot is probably the strongest action we can take right now. And the Native American Voting Rights Act to make sure that the Native folks can cast their ballots. So those were some suggestions that came forth, and then Autumn's going to take us to our
Joe.
next. No, that's Kate. Sorry. Whoever's next.
I think it's Joe.
Joe.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for coming this evening. And most of you for reading the book. It doesn't matter if you did or not. It's fun to discuss. The next book, which I hope, the next book club, I hope you will all attend, is on December 11th at 7 o'clock. And the book is this one. And it's backward, isn't it? Well,
No,
democracy.
we see it straight
You
on.
see it straight.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Democracy Awakening by Heather Cox Richardson. Notes on the State of America. It, more than most of the books we have read, tells us about how we got here. And it tells us in simple chapter by chapter form. And each chapter is relatively short, easy to digest, and makes a good point about how we got here. So you can follow along, and step by step, you can see literally how we got here. So I hope you all will enjoy that book and join us on December 11th, and tell all your friends.
And Heather Cox Richardson's coming on the
Ooh.
11th.
Yes.
Just to kick off our discussion.
Wow.
So, which will be really remarkable. So, big, Doreen's got 2 thumbs up for getting the author to come to the book club.
Yeah. And most of us have seen Heather be interviewed on TV a million times, but it'll be interesting on December 11th, right after the election, to hear what she has to say about how democracy held up. I forget, Olivia, do you know which day in December the Electoral College meets? It's right around then.
I don't know, but yeah.
Gosh, I hope it's not November 11th. And she says, I can't go.
December.
Yeah.
I'm sure she has that date on her calendar, knowing Heather Cox Richardson.
I
Oh,
suspect-
yeah.
She told us December 11th she was available.
I just wanted to, when I put in the chat this thing, anativeson.org, that's Eddie Glaude's page where his podcast is. And particularly for Angela, that would be helpful if you don't already have it to to dive into that. And that linked me to Imani Perry's because he talks about her quite a bit. And this just popped up this morning, a Black Literary Massachusetts Trail. I sent it to my other book group that's meeting tonight, which is discussing James. And you definitely just pop that open and read about that. She talks about, I just realized this place in Cambridge and that place, just like what people were talking about in New Hampshire. So those will be in the resource page, but just they're both so present to the book that we're reading tonight.
Yeah, I read James too.
Yeah.
It's good.
No, I meant Eddie's book. Some of us are reading it. And then everybody else now will. You'll be like, oh yeah, I better go read that now.
I'm sorry, did you say James is another book of Eddie's?
No, there's a
no.
book about racism called James, and it's about Jim's the
Mark
Oh, Jim.
Twain's, yeah.
Huckleberry Finn from Jim's point of view.
Oh,
So it's
oh,
Really
being-
wonderful. I went
Yeah.
back, read Huckleberry Finn, and that really helped before I read James.
Yeah. it was-
I've been dying to be in a book club to discuss James, so I'm glad you guys got that chance.
No, I'm missing it tonight with my book group. My other book group is talking about it tonight, and
Oh no.
that's all right. It's all right. I'm here with y'all.
Thank you.
So the author of James is the guy who wrote the book that film American Fiction is
Oh.
based on.
Oh, yeah.
American Fiction, if you haven't seen that, that's a great film, and it
Yeah.
deals
It
with
is.
some of these same issues. So Everything's connected.
Mhm.
That'll preach.
Well,
Well, as long as we're throwing resources out there, I recently participated in a group confronting whiteness, where white people read and discussed a lot of books by Black folks about what it's like from the point of view of Black people to be in a world that's privileges whites and especially white males, but especially James Baldwin was one of the key authors, but reading books like Baldwin and Du Bois and people like that, and Imani Perry and Kimberly Crenshaw and people like that, it really gives, for me anyway, a wonderful perspective on the world from the point of view that I don't live in, from that perspective. I'm unfortunately on the privileged side of that.
great.
David, before we go, I really need to thank you for running for office. You're a brave man.
Yes, David.
Thank you.
Well, a guy who can teach
Round
fifth
of
graders
applause.
all year can run for office, I guess, right?
What are you running for?
A state rep from a very red town where my opponent says that we should use the N word in public and in writing as much as possible to prove that we have First Amendment rights.
Oh,
free
boy.
speech rights.
Oh, dear.
What is that, Jason Osborne?
No, he's of that ilk. No,
Yeah.
Travis Corcoran is his name. But the 80% of Ware thinks he's just fine. We'll
Oh,
fill in
Ware.
his odor.
Mm,
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
very definitely. Yeah.
We're
Good
trying.
luck.
Well, thank you all for coming and for participating in this important discussion. And we'll see you all on December 11th, if not beforehand. I hope we'll see many of you before December 11th with other actions we'll take to protect our democracy.
Indeed.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
All
Thanks,